Welcome back to another episode of Sideways, a podcast about motorcycles in Taiwan. I am Michael Branica, a filmmaker, YouTube filmmaker, and off-road enthusiast. And with me here I have Sasha Finster, an instructor at Moto Skills Factory, which is an on and off-road riding school in Taichung. How you doing, Sasha?
Good. Thanks for having me today, Michael.
So today we would like to talk about adventure bikes and kind of go over the stuff that is available in Taiwan. Last time we had discussed about how the market here is really different from what you see in other countries and how taxes kind of throw everything out of whack. So things that seem like a really good buy in other countries here, they might be hard to get or ridiculously expensive. And so we wanted to kind of go through the options. And just to start out with, I wanted to kind of say the stuff that we're not going to talk about. First of all, that's like dirt bikes and dual sport bikes. You can get DRZ 400s here. You can get WR 450s. I have a plated WR 450. And you'll have people who will say, I would ride across America on that. I would ride across Europe on that. And I've said that myself. But right now, we want to talk about adventure bikes. And so these are basically street-based bikes with street-based engines for long travel. And then the other thing that we're going to avoid is motorcycles with a 17-inch front wheel. And you'll have people who are going to say, well, throw a TKC 80 on it, it'll be fine. And I rode a Supermoto with TKC 80s and 17s off-road for years. And sure, you can do it, but they're not really meant for that. And if a bike comes with a 17-inch front wheel, it's not really meant for off-road. People have put TKC 80s on a Panigale and taken it off-road, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea or it's really what we want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. 17-inch wheels you can ride a Harley off-road if you want to. It's like you said, there are always the exceptions, people who can do anything. But yeah, today let's talk about bikes that are suitable, built for off-road riding as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so the bikes we talk about will have a 19 or a 21-inch front wheel, and that is kind of a clue as to what they're meant to do. So I wanted to start out with the lighter bikes, and for the people who are just kind of getting into it, what their options are. And the first one I had on the list is the G310. Here it's about 330 to 350,000, which is pretty affordable for Taiwan. 19-inch front wheel, 34 horsepower, and on the used market, because lots of these guys, like they want a BMW and they run out and they buy that, and then they want to upgrade. They want to get the R1200, and so they turn around and they sell them. So actually the used market, there's quite a few. It's been out for a few years. So what are your thoughts on that bike?
Well, the 310 GS, the baby GS, right? Here in Taiwan, I think it's really good. It's a really good bike to start on. You don't really have the pressure of having such a huge bike with that massive weight on it that you have to throw around and stuff. So I think it's a really, really good bike to start off with. It's a good bike to travel on if you just, want to do, adventure riding with, traveling, everything. It's a smaller bike, small engine, but for a rookie, it's a really, really good bike to start off with. Parts are not so super expensive. They still have the BMW price tag here in Taiwan, which is not too low. But it's a good bike to get your feet wet. You do have to get some parts on and change some parts actually. If not, it's just gonna be such a headache going off-road. Basically all of our students who are riding or have ridden that model, they had to change the front and rear sprocket. It's just, we're not even talking about really hardcore stuff, just gravel roads with just a little bit of elevation. You hit some patches that are maybe a little more, a little slippery, whatever, or more challenging. you stall the bike and it's just really hard to get going again. So it's a good base, and if you really enjoy off-road riding, I don't think it's going to be such a big problem just to adjust the bike a little bit more. And yeah, after that, it is a good bike to not be overwhelmed.
So it's hard to get going because of the low horsepower?
No, it's just geared so for the street basically, right? So you really off-road if you stop on a hill, whatever. And again, we're not talking about like some really tough, steep stuff, right? If you stop on a hill and you want to keep going again, the engine just dies all the time unless you're revving the crap out of it. So by just adjusting the stroke ratio, it's just so much better, And again, basically most of our students they don't want to go crazy and hit 200 kilometers an hour anyways, So just getting or just lowering the high speed on road to make it more favorable off road is just okay. Right, but this is something that we've seen that everyone basically had to change, right? You had to adjust the ratio to get more of the bike out of in off-road conditions.
Yeah, that's a typical modification to do. I think the CRF 250 also benefits from that as well. I think a lot of these bikes, they're designed from the factory for really good fuel mileage and to hit these certain targets. And I know a lot of Honda's transmissions, like they'll have a really tall sixth gear that you would only use it above 100, really. And that's to hit those targets that they have. And gearing is a huge thing. And so in its category, I noticed that the seat height is 835 millimeters, which is a little bit lower. And I think that makes it nice for a lot of people.
It is pretty good because the ground clearance is actually not that bad. The seat height is not that challenging, but the ground clearance is not that bad. So obviously there are better bikes, but like for that, it is better. Yeah, and I mean, we do have some riders who chuck a lot of money. They get the rally raid suspension kits, and they change to spoke wheels and all of these things, right? What we do see most of the time though is again it's a beginner's bike. You get your feet wet, you realize whether or not you're gonna like riding adventure bikes, and if you do, like you said, you're gonna switch bikes fairly quickly. All right. So, but changing the sprocket ratio is not too expensive, very fast, right? So this is yeah, a good thing for the baby GS.
Yeah. And then the next one that I had on my list was the KTM 390 Adventure. It kind of just hit the ground here. It's pretty affordable, same price category, about the same weight. It's got more horsepower, a little bit more peppy engine. I guess KTM likes to, wring a little bit more horsepower out of their engines, which might affect it on the long end of things. I did get to ride one of these when I was with your crew when we went out to the trails. And one thing that I noticed that other people have also mentioned is how the riding position doesn't really feel like it's designed for off-road. When you go to stand up, it feels really awkward and you kind of feel like you're bending over a lot. And then another thing that I've heard in connection to that is basically that I guess it was designed for the Indian market. And I was listening to this guy who was saying that Indians actually don't stand up off-road. And so they design their bikes to be sitting, which might explain some of that. I'm not really sure what the background is on the design for that. So what are your thoughts on the 390 Adventure?
Well, again, it goes into the same category as the baby GS, as the GS 310. One thing, obviously, it's about the same price category as well. It has a little more horsepower, yes. it has a lot more of electronical assistance, right? It has the Bosch cornering ABS and stuff like that, and a lot of things that the 310GS doesn't have, right? I'm a big KTM fan, but I do have to say I'm just a little bit disappointed with the 390 because one reason, for example, like you just mentioned, standing up and it just feels like it just wants to throw you over the handlebars is because, and it's been already covered in many, many reviews and stuff, is just the foot pegs, right? They're leaning towards the front. So when you stand, you cannot stand 90 degrees upwards, right? So it just throws you a bit to the front. I mean, in certain situations, it's nice when you're giving gas, you're accelerating and stuff, you're easier in the, proper body positioning. But if you're cruising or if you're going downhill, it's just the exact opposite, right? And I've seen there are some aftermarket companies who are actually producing pegs that will make up for that angle. So they're slight, like if you look at them, they're tinted to the back. But if you mount them, they're just, parallel to the ground, right? Which I think should make a big difference. But it's just awkward why they would do this. Why, well, like especially KTM, who is an off-road company. Um, but yeah, this is one thing. Another thing is just now I mentioned the ground clearance for the GS310. The 390 ADV doesn't even come close to that. This is something that I personally don't really understand. The seat height is higher, is taller than the GS310. However, the ground clearance is lower, is less. And this is again something kind of, it makes sense what you said, it's designed for people who are sitting. Even though it's off-road, they're sitting. And if you sit, it's more comfortable, even though again the seat of the GS310 is softer. And it's just a little more comfortable. Whereas in the 390 ADV, it's just firmer. And, it's just so again, if it's designed to be ridden in a sitting position, now why not give it a more plush, more comfortable, seat? I don't know. This is something that they just brought out spoke wheels that you can order in the Power Parts catalog, whatever, which is great. But then why not maybe, an upgraded suspension kit, where you can get a little more ground clearance out because now you could opt for spoke wheels, which is better for off-road riding. You can do more. You don't have to worry about, bending or breaking your rims. But then you still have to worry about, hitting your engine or whatever on a rock, on a lock, whatever, and then getting major damage. So yeah, I think it's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit disappointing because I think it's a really good beginner's bike, just like the GS310, but they kind of missed, the goal a little bit at the end. Yes, you can argue again, yes, it's a beginner's bike. You just want to get your feet wet, and if you like it, you switch to the 790, the 890 now, or the 1290 eventually. But still, it's off-road wise. To me, it's just a little bit less capable than the GS310, even though the electronics are more capable than the 310. But now the new 2021 model of the GS310, they also put in more electronical, assistance and gimmicks as well. So yeah, it's really nice. But if you really like off-road riding, unfortunately, for me, I would tend more towards the BMW.
Yeah, yeah, and it's too bad that you can't get spoked wheels from those bikes from the factory. Even if they're an option that's a little bit higher, instead of having to buy the bike and then change the wheels, like it would be nice to just check that box. I did notice that the electronics were fairly advanced for a small bike, where you could turn off the rear ABS and keep the front on, and that's nice. It's nice having that safety net on the front.
I think a lot of times, I think we're going to get into that later on with some other models as well. Um, Now it seems like a lot of focus is on the electronic side, and sometimes the hardware is being forgotten. So you can have all the great off-road gimmicks, but if you don't have enough suspension stroke, if you cannot protect your engine or whatever properly, or your bike properly, you don't have enough ground clearance, whatever, using all these off-road assistance will still be limited. So, and like you said, it's like, it's built for people to be ridden in a seated position, and there it makes sense, right? And just the fact that both models, the GS310 and the 390 ADV, don't come with spoke wheels, just basically indicate, the range where you can use them, right? And it's obviously not some hardcore thing, which you can throw around and, go really, really, mental on.
Yeah. So the next bike I just wanted to touch on really quickly, I think maybe you and I disagree about it a little bit, is the CRF. So we've had the 250 for a while, and now they've announced the 300. I don't know if any of them are in the country right now.
They just arrived.
And okay,
They just arrived. Yeah.
So yeah, and it's the engine. It's a street engine. It's out of the CBR 250. And when they launched this bike, the CRF 250, they already had the 300cc engine. And I always questioned why they didn't go ahead and put it in there,
Right.
because it just always seems a bit anemic. I've ridden them, and it just doesn't really do that much for me in the 250. And I'm sure the 350 is only just like minuscule
Right.
more. But if you're a beginner, I think it's enough, and it comes with a 21-inch spoked wheel. You don't have to go out there and go crazy like with parts. If you drop it, it'll be fine. Like, you don't have to buy all this protection stuff
Right.
for it. The Rally, to be honest, like, the Rally's 155 kg, and to me it's an adventure bike. Because it's big, it's got wind protection, it's got a bigger tank, and for me, anything that's 155 kg is not a dirt bike.
Right.
But I don't know what your thoughts are on this bike.
Well, actually, I agree with you. We do have quite some student riders who ride the CRF 250. Unfortunately, in Taiwan, before, they only imported the L version, which is a low version, right? And it's the suspension is soft, is on the soft side as it is. So just by picking the bike up from the side stand, you're already, a third of the stroke is almost gone, right? Then you sit yourself on top of the bike, and you kind of know how much you have left. I'm not too sure if they are still importing the L version, because now it's actually Honda Taiwan that imports them, and not some gray import, whatever, right? Yeah, but to be honest, it's a nice bike just to go on a 1-day trip. Maybe 2-day trip. You just have some extra clothes, whatever inside, but nothing too fancy, nothing too big. I think it's a good bike, especially for Taiwan. Taiwan is not that huge anyways. The only issue that I personally always had is the low version, right? I've never seen a standard version here in Taiwan, unless some people have, upgraded it again, but I haven't seen them, right? So I agree, actually. Also, the rally version is more of an adventure bike because you have more mileage, a bigger gas tank. You can go further. You have wind protection, and this, for me personally, would be a bike that I would choose. I mean, there is a weight difference for the 250 normal standard version and the rally version. The suspension was different, right? And we've seen that the rally actually was softer than the CRF 250. But then in Taiwan, again, it didn't really make that big of a difference because the low version was so soft anyways, So, but some people, they want to go hardcore, or at least they think they're going to go hardcore, having that windscreen on the front. To them, another 10 kilograms, whatever, would be the world. For us, 10 kilograms is nothing. If your bike is, because our bikes are way beyond 250 kilograms. So if your bike is 210 or 220 or 240, 250, there is a difference, yes, but, nothing that we, would go crazy about, right? But yeah, both bikes actually, to me, they would go again in the same category as the 390 ADV and the Baby GS. However, they are a little bit more off-road biased. So people who from the get-go say, you know what, I'm not too sure, but I want to do more off-road than I've done before, I would actually say, yeah, go with the CRF. Then because the GS and the 390, they're more, kind of, 50-50. Whereas the other two, especially the standard version, obviously this is more off-road bias because no wind protection whatsoever. Taiwan is not that big, but it can get very windy. If you're somewhere on express or whatever, especially on the coast, you're gonna hate that bike, big time. All right, so.
Well, with the 300, at least you get a yellow plate, and you can keep up with, the 390s and the 310s and those bikes, and you don't just get left behind. Because I know a lot of people, they would like to ride the lighter bike, but they won't get a 250 because all their friends ride big bikes,
exactly.
and when they jump on the highway, and then they leave you behind.